I think it's like what 68% of men that are on child support pay and they pay on time. And
It's
then
lower than that.
yeah,
But that doesn't account for people who don't go through the system who are paying child support.
exactly. But
You,
what I'm saying is that most men pay child support, even in the arrangements where they just pay and then the woman puts them on, and then they're like, "You got back child." Like, so they pay for their children. Most men pay for their children. At that law that I said I want to pass, where the child mandatorily goes to the father at 9, what percentage of women do you think would pay child support on time? Because they're
35.
gonna have to pay. Go ahead.
Honestly, I'd say probably close to maybe 50%, but I'd actually argue that about 90% of men wouldn't even ask for it.
They don't. They already don't ask for it.
I can agree to that too.
But
So
it's
I
no,
would
no.
say
But this
though,
law is
I
gonna
would
make it
say,
mandatory.
but I would say that
But
if my
why
Well,
child,
I think she should.
I think that if my child, if my child was going to the dad's house, I probably wouldn't give him money, but I would definitely give my child money. For example, I would like, okay, because I do
Yeah,
that
I
now.
can see that. I can see that.
I would definitely send my child money, like, here's extra money, for whatever. Like,
So the
But I
more we had these
I
conversations, the more I realized that Ena's points about like the religious aspect of the other countries. So just based off what she said tonight, right? If the mother doesn't have a child, the likelihood of her getting married by being just a single woman by herself, that skyrockets. The discipline for the child and being with the father, that skyrockets. So it's a better outcome for the child. And do men in those countries typically tend to cheat a lot? Is there a large percentage of cheating?
No, because there's polygamy. You just get another wife.
So
Hey,
so what they're saying is that they've understood the nature of men and pre-solved for this prior to it becoming an issue. So how many of those kids are gang banging and shooting up the neighborhood?
Well, We don't want to have that
That's the
conversation.
thing, though, with America and just the Western civilization becoming more secular too. I think that's a variable in addition to the incentives. I don't think it's just one thing, but I mean, I think that's a factor also. But and I know I've said this before, but my parents had us like join. It was like every other weekend, and then it was during the week too. It was like every other day or something like that. But my dad, instead of paying child support, they put in their agreement that he would send us to private schools, and I think that was a good idea. Now that
but
I'm
even some
older,
people are paying child support and sending to private school.
oh, that's some.
I got one more point to make
He
about
didn't
this.
make that much money.
When we talked about time earlier, that the child needs to have the consistent parent around. So if you're working 40 hours to support a household by yourself, you're probably not at home. And if the father has to go work 40 hours to support the child at the separate house, you're not home. So essentially y'all paying 80, you're putting 80 hours of work in, not including traffic and travel. And then the child comes home and is pretty much probably at home alone or with an
yep,
exhausted parent. So
yep.
now one person is doing the job of two people in both of those households, as opposed to three people doing the job of one person. Oh my God, it makes so much sense.
Oh, this is why I just
Unless you
advocate
get a
for people.
teacher.
Stay together. Like this happiness thing. So this is the funniest thing about divorce in general. If a man is not whooping your ass, what point is there to leave? If you have children, what point is there? Because what Marcus said is the literal way that I look at it. Look at the life of your children. This is actually the point that I want to make about to women about men and men not having money. Nobody divorces into financial prosperity. Not even Jeff Bezos. He lost 30 bill. Okay? They divorce into financial ruin and financial deficiency. Now, in addition to him having to pay a portion of his child support out, you now immediately have to split the biggest expense anybody has in the home, which is housing itself. So that is going to have an immediate impact on the children. You're probably going to have to cancel activities. There's only one parent there to pick them up if the parent doesn't live close, right? So the quality of life is diminished for both parents and the children. Divorce makes no sense to me. I don't
Can
know why
I
people do it.
let me add something? And I think this is interesting. And I mentioned a stat last week about how young people like family and marriage is like out. I think it's like third on their list of priorities, something like that. But it says, according to Pew Research from January, a large majority, 88% of parents prioritize work and money for their children, while 20 to 21% believe marriage and children are important milestones. So it kind of goes along with that too.
Can I address this, because I hate when people get my conversation. That was a different scenario. He didn't see his child for 10 months out of the year. He only saw his child for 2 months out of the year. Totally different situation. That is a totally different situation. So stop. I just wanted to say that.
Which situation? Whose situation?
I was like,
No,
what is going
I don't
on
want
here?
to bring his. It was a guy, and he was saying how he does not see his kid because he's in another state, but he only sees the kid for the summer. That's not the same as a guy who sees his kid every other week, every other week. That's two different scenarios. They're not the same.
Well, I don't. I think it's one of the things that you also run into in co-parenting situations in general is that once if you're not married to someone and y'all aren't living in the same house raising your children, be ready for anything. Be ready for anything because some women say, "Oh, you're supposed to be there for your child," but if men don't advance their career, they may lose the ability to take care of that child because that is basically what women want them for is to be a wallet, right? So if a man has to move out of state, that's just what he has to do. Because remember, this children
You
were
can
meant to.
parent out of state.
You can parent. That's what I'm saying. But what do mom's biggest complaint is? I have no help. You're not even here or whatever. Nah, I'm a check. I'm a check. If we're not together, just be prepared for them. It can be very you know, cordial experience. It can be a very mature experience, or it can go all the way out to the extreme and be some stupid shit. Like I think once you're divorced or not together, be prepared for anything. That's why I
In
say
some situations, though, you won't be able to move out the state.
some situations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
some situations. Because
yeah.
I know
Like the
I
moms
have
can.
a what we call a cousin because, we grew up together, but that was her situation. She wanted to move out of state with the children because she had a better work opportunity where she would be able to make more money and things like that. The father did not agree to it, so she had to stay. So in
So,
some situations, even if you wanted to leave, you couldn't.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
so
I'll say real quick and then go ahead, AP. Real quick, before we even do anything with the incentives, which that's a whole nother discussion, I think the marriage laws need to be addressed because if we're saying men and women need to stay together, but like I sympathize with men when they say they don't want to be married. And of course, we're like, well, then don't, but then the children and things like that, because people are still having children. So it's like,
So
I
how do
think the
you?
marriage,
That's a good question.
the marriage laws need to be addressed. I think.
So what do you do about that? Because more and more men are saying that they don't want to be married.
Right.
So that's going to be more co-parenting because they ain't saying they don't want kids. They're saying they don't want to be married.
Well, they're
I
also
think that gets.
everybody's having less children. So
Uh,
Well, yeah,
uh,
that too.
I
Less
think that
children means one child, could be one child. Less children doesn't mean no kids. It
yeah,
means
yeah, you're right. You're right.
so
yeah,
even with one child, you have to think about co-parenting if you're not getting married.
y'all.
Mhm.
I think y'all are going to probably disagree with me on this, and as
We
well
all
as the
going to
chat.
hell. This country is.
I think that when Shan, and this is going back to your point, I think the reason why men don't really want to get married, I think that's the adjustment to women, the women's behavior in the current climate. I don't think that is not that men don't necessarily want to get married. I just believe that that is the current climate that women have kind of created, and men don't want to deal with the shit. That's just my opinion on it.
I can agree with that. They think that grass is green out here. It's not. It is not.